As our next step in UFO research, we need to quantify with how much force a spinning magnet will rise up by pushing against the vacuum, just like a top rises. We'll have 3 wire coils below, which we'll call UVW, given 3-phase power. They all have about 18 ohms resistance. And we have a 70 millimeter magnet with a 14 millimeter hole sitting on an 8 millimeter stainless steel rod. It's only about 3 millimeters thick. Now this magnet weighs just 80 grams, and when we turn on the 3-phase power, when we get to about 15 hertz, it begins to rise up. That's good, but what if we had some more weight on top of that magnet? Will it still push up? Next we have added 4 shaft collars on top of that magnet that weigh about 40 grams, so the total weight's now 120 grams. Let's see if it'll rise up. 15 hertz, 18 hertz. Look at that. It came up at 20 hertz, 120 grams. Now we're going to add 2 heavier shaft collars on top of it. The total weight's now about 200 grams, 80 for the magnet, 120 for the shaft collars, and we'll see if it'll rise up. 15 hertz, 16, 20, 22 hertz, 25 hertz. So by the time we reach 25 hertz, we can lift about 200 grams. Now you might imagine this is some mechanical force between the turning magnet and the rod rather than pushing against the vacuum. To answer that question, we've turned the magnet over by 180 degrees, so any mechanical force should push it downward. Now we've still got about 150 grams on top of the magnet, with the magnet included. 15 hertz, 20 hertz, 25 hertz, and it still flies off. So we know there's pushing against the vacuum and not the pole itself. Now in this experiment, we have only lifted 80 grams of this magnet and another 120 grams of iron placed above using these 3 wire coils. So we've got about 200 grams of lift, and the coils weigh about 1 kilogram in total. So you'd say, oh, it'll never get off the ground. However, we can switch to aluminium for the coils. Of course, we won't use copper. Aluminium is much lighter, and also with higher temperature insulation, we can put much more power into it. So it's not impossible to consider we'll get more upward force than the weight of the coils in a future experiment. Finally, in our next experiment, we're going to add a ring of magnets around the outside of the central magnet, and we're going to spin the central magnet clockwise while this ring of magnets goes anti-clockwise, and we're going to see if that changes Newton's third law so that that upward 200 grams of force can become purely upward force like for UFO without as much or any downward force due to Newton's third law of action-reaction. And if we do that, then we'll have discovered UFO physics on Earth for the first time. Thank you to the stars.